Hi, namaste, and welcome to Breakout with me, Abha. Thank you so much for watching. You know, we are committed on this show to bring to you exceptional game changers, people who have changed the thought processes all around the world, and they're doing exceptional work because they want to help us to understand that it's possible to change. These are people who've been there and done that, and guess what? They are willing to share their insights so we can break out of what we find limiting and break into something that we find necessary for us. And our guests teach us that there is only one rule to life, and that is that there are no rules to life. We just make them up all on the way because everything is figure outable. Now you see somebody on my side. This gentleman is my guest today, yet another exceptional gentleman. He is an internationally acclaimed thought leader who's known for extremely useful content with a passion for making it easier for everyone to work smarter and not harder. People call him Mr. Simplicity. He just makes it easier to do great work. He helps companies and people and teams double their productivity and pursue their passions. And he has spent, you know how much? More than 2 decades, 25 years studying how work gets done. And what he finds is that it gets done in the most horrible way. He can just make it easier for all of us. So we must speak with him because he's going to teach us and tell us exactly where we're going wrong. And he is the CEO of the Jensen Group. Among his clients are Bank of America, Merck, Pfizer, GE, L'Oreal, Italia, NASA, the World Bank, BBC, Philips Lighting, the US Navy SEALs, the Government of Ontario, Singapore Institute of Management, and the Swedish Post Office. Please welcome the man whose personal life fantasy is to bicycle around the globe via the breweries. Please explain that to us. Bill Jensen, welcome.
I'm thrilled to be with you.
Thank you. It's so great to have you, and I'm so looking forward to have this conversation because I think we live in this overcomplicated world where everything is made out to be bigger than it is, and every small thing that can be done with that much of an effort or with that much intelligence is stretched beyond the palpable or the palatable limits. So now tell us, Bill, about your background. Let us know where this all started, why you're doing what you're doing, and why is it important that simplifying things is the key to success.
Well, why it's so important, Abha. Let me begin with it's not just dumbing things down or making lists shorter or strategies shorter. Simplicity throughout human history has always been about power. The more powerful people get things made simple for them.
Right.
And the losers of wars and political battles always have things more complicated.
Okay.
So simplicity ultimately is about empowerment. Right. The more you make it simpler for each individual. Right. So every time I speak at an executive offsite, the very first thing that I ask them is simpler for whom? Because most companies are very good at making things simple for the company, right, but not necessarily for the workforce.
Right.
And how I discovered, you asked, how did I come to this? How I discovered this was actually in university. I was taking a logic course, if then PQ, very structured math. And it came easy to me. I actually did well in the same course in high school. Wow. So I decided to take a chance. I blew off the midterm. I was only going to take the final. I didn't go to any classes.
Right.
And at one point when I was supposed to be in class, I went to a science museum. And I stumbled into the back of this museum and I saw these kids, grade school kids, 5th or 6th graders, playing with a maze. And it had about 20 ping pong balls at the top. And the goal was to get just one ping pong ball to drop to the bottom.
Right.
And I saw them blow it once and then twice. And the third time they got it, they walked away high-fiving each other. And I realized at that moment, they were doing college-level logic. because in my textbook that I blew off, the exam that I didn't take, you need, for an and statement, you need two halves of a statement to be true.
Right.
They figured out in this maze that meant two gates to get a ball to drop.
Right.
Or statement, you only need one half to drop to be true.
Right.
So they figured out that meant just one gate.
Right.
And what I realized was they were doing a college level, a university level logic problem, only it was designed as a game.
Right.
So what I realized at that moment is anybody in the world, no matter what their age level, can solve very, very complex problems if we design the interface, the game, the instruction, the manual, the course we put them through, the process we put them through. If we design the interface at their level.
Right.
So what I've been doing for almost 3 decades is helping companies design workflows and processes and training and development and communication from the workforce's perspective, not just the company's.
Right. So this is actually quite amazing. What you're talking about is pretty simple, but when you hear it once again, and I think most of the people who will be listening to you just now, watching you, they would say, "Oh my God, I already knew this, and why didn't I think of it myself?" But that is a fact, because we look at the results, we look at from point A to point Z and wonder what. And if we figure that interfix and simplify that part of the process, which anybody can pick up based on wherever they stand, I think it just sort of eases out the whole complexity of the head that people put into making things complicated. So
and Abha, if I can even make it simpler,
right.
I'll give you my secret that I do all the time with senior execs. I get paid very, very well to consult with senior executives.
Right.
The secret that I have isn't mine, and it's thousands and thousands of years old.
Right.
It's the golden rule.
Right. What is it?
It is walk a mile in the other person's shoes. Treat them the way you want to be treated. So all I do when I help senior executives make things simpler is I put them in the shoes of the people who have to do the work,
right.
or the customer, or whoever the end user of whatever the process or tool is.
Right.
It's the golden rule. That's it. That's
right.
all I do. And I get paid very, very well to practice that.
That's great. I mean, that's pretty simple, but I think it's solid. People have to understand who's doing it. And if that we understand that, who walk in their shoes and sort of give it to them, not on a plate, but in the way that they can do best, I think we won. So this is great. Bill, tell me, where can people reach you? What's your website? Is your simplerwork.com?
Yes, the best way is www.simplerwork.com.
So,
and my email is bill@simplerwork.com.
Great. So everybody who's listening and watching, you can reach out to Bill at www.simplerwork.com. That is simplerwork.com, and his email is bill@simplerwork.com. Okay, Bill. We are in a very transitional phase of the social world today, because of technology, because of all the kinds of exposure that we are getting. There's too much disruption, and some of the disruption is all false. It's all more like noise and less of disruption. So we are in a very confused space. So my question to you is, what do you see as the biggest challenges in this space? A lot of people are confused. A lot of people have no clue what to do, and people are going, there's too much information out there, and everybody says that this is possible this way, and everybody's looking at those possibilities, but there are challenges as well over there. So you will have to tell me, what are the challenges and what are the opportunities in this space facing leaders, managers, teams, and people in general?
Great question. Thank you. The biggest thing in this era of disruption, we have to accept and embrace that everything that needs to get done that's worthwhile, where the magic happens, where the excellence happens, where the innovation happens, everything, 100%, is going to be outside of your comfort zone. So the first thing is to accept, In World War II, there was a cartoon character in the United States, and he called Pogo, and it was a little guy, and he has a quote where it says, "We have met the enemy, and he is us." The biggest challenge in the era in disruption is me, is
Right.
you, is
Right.
the listener right now, is our own personal filters and biases.
Right.
So the biggest thing every leader I coach, every team that I work with, the biggest thing is getting ourselves out of our way to accept that we need to look at the situation differently.
Right.
And that is the biggest hurdle. I would say out of all business problems, that's probably 75% of it.
Right.
So a lot of what I do is, I call it a Trojan horse. I mask it in a business problem because that's what I get paid for.
Right.
But it's really personal coaching.
Right.
It's really helping the person see, oh, I thought I had to do it this way, but I really have to let go and do it another way.
Right.
That's really what it comes down to.
Right. I think it's the biggest skill today that one needs is to be able to adapt and change with what's going on. And a lot of people, as you rightly say, we call this the comfort zone, but we are slow as compared to what's going on in front of us. So a lot of people are not able to ride that thing, because I personally feel this is a time of opportunities. It's like the big time of opportunities and innovation, and it's open for all of us to do what we possibly can think of. But a lot of people are stuck fighting with that same thing, saying, okay, I don't think this is happening because there's no visible tomorrow over here. So which is very interesting. So it actually turns people into sometimes silly. They don't see it as an opportunity and see it more as a challenge. But I think if we could just flip the coin a little bit, we could do a little bit better there.
I think the biggest opportunity we have in the industrialized world, this is not true necessarily in the third world countries, but in major industrialized countries, the biggest opportunity we have is the most precious asset is not money. It is time and attention.
Right.
So the biggest opportunity, you and I, no matter how much we come up with great ideas, we fall into one thing. The most important number that's hardly ever discussed in business is the number 1440. And that is the number of minutes in a day.
Right.
So more and more demands are coming at all of us for our time and attention.
Right.
And the biggest opportunities out there are, how can we save people time and attention?
Right.
We've gotten to the point where people will pay from little bit to a lot to save me time and attention so I can use it elsewhere.
Right. So if I could take you to the process, for example, I mean, anything has a process. And what you're doing is very clearly defining probably that process, or maybe just laying it out in a manner that is relatable to your clients. You've written a book called Disrupt, Think Epic and Be Epic. Now, I want to know, in terms of processes, how important or how effective is this whole idea of, innovation via disruption? Because disruption is something that, it's a very smart word today. I personally believe that disruption is the best way to achieve something, because and if you have the capacity to go and sort of just chop off from there and move into a different direction and just take it on. I personally find it but a lot of people think that disruption is disturbance. So I've seen your book. I've just read a couple of things over there. It says think epic, be epic. Give us a little bit of a view on how disruption works. How can it actually help processes rather than, disturbing processes?
What all of us are facing around the globe is just about every system that made your coffee cup, that made your clothing, that made your glasses, that made your hair color, that made everything, that made your education system, that made the lighting system. Just about every system that we use and structure is anywhere between decades and centuries old.
Right.
And every single system is now being revolutionized by the digital and analytical and artificial intelligence and Internet of Everything revolution. So where we're at is everything we do is being totally revolutionized. So the opportunities here are if you are willing to blow up things and choose to do it first. Clayton Christensen called it the innovator's dilemma. You have to choose to blow up what's working now, or what you think is working now. And in the same way that FedEx and Google have become verbs or descriptions beyond what they are,
Right.
Everybody around the world, every senior exec is afraid of being Ubered. And Uber has become a verb where Uber is the car transportation system, meaning that until a few years ago, we had taxi and limousine commissions. We had, you had to get a license. Now everybody in the world who has a car can be a car service.
Right.
So every industry, healthcare is going to be completely revolutionized. What's happening is pharmaceutical companies used to pay big bucks for the patents for their drugs. We're in a phase where patient data is going to be even more valuable than pharmaceuticals.
Right.
So what you're going to see in the next few years, besides self-driving cars and things like that, you are going to see tech companies taking over healthcare companies.
Right.
So we are in this space, and I want to go back to everything that's of value is outside of your comfort zone. The biggest challenge, it's not easy, it's a lot of hard work, but the biggest challenge is not the technical revolution or the disruption revolution, it's the willingness to say, I'm going to blow up my own work before somebody else does.
Right.
That's the toughest challenge.
Right. And amongst your clients and the people you coach with, what's the percentage of people who are willing to go that way, to blow up their own thing, blow up their work?
Not enough.
Not enough, yeah.
So I just recently completed an independent future of work study.
Right.
And the number one finding across, this was a global study, 7,000 participants around the world, the number one finding is that most corporate executives are holding back the future. Because most corporate executives, especially in public or big companies, they put themselves at personal risk if they decide to disrupt themselves.
Right.
So what's happening is most executives see the need to change, but are unwilling to put their ass on the line to say, I'm going to risk it. Right. So what we really need is courageous leaders who are saying, this has to change, and I'm going to step up and do that.
Well, that brings me to your other book, which is The Courage Within Us. And we are here focused on, creating that courage, finding that courage and knowing where to get it and going out and doing something with it. So what have you learned about courage that we need as we go through this very, very disruptive phase, very, very innovative phase, very blowing up phase, I think it's a fear-based space at this point where people are not truly clear about what's going on. So that risk of, jumping off the bandwagon is also very high. So based on that book, your book is there, plus based on what we're doing over here, give us a couple of things that we could, develop that courage and go out there and actually make this happen.
Sure. So far I've written 8 books, and they're on all different subjects. But in the last few, I've been asking global leaders around the world the same question. I asked them, what makes you, you?
Right.
And good leaders, great leaders, are able to call upon a story, an event that happened to them that shaped their views. Right. Years ago, he's now passed, but a leadership guru, Warren Bennis, called these crucible moments.
Right.
Every great leader, it's like the hero's journey. In every movie you ever see, Luke in Star Wars, he was unwilling to become part of the Force, to become a Jedi, and then his aunt and uncle die, and he suddenly has this crucible moment where he joins and becomes a Jedi. Every movie you can imagine, there's this hero's journey where there's this one moment where the hero has to decide to look inside him or herself Well, what I found by interviewing leaders around the world, everyone who is willing to take the risks in the disruptive age, they are calling upon something within themselves.
Right.
So I can guarantee you, Abha, me, every one of your listeners right now, your viewers, they have had one moment, as long as they're beyond their teenage years,
right.
Every single one of us has had at least one moment in our lives where we faced either adversity or triumph that shaped our courage, and we need to learn to apply that.
Right.
I'll give you a couple examples.
Right.
For me, it was the death of my mom. It was almost 22 years ago, and what happened was she had a massive stroke. We were in the emergency room. They said there was nothing more they could do, and they left her in the emergency room, and we went to the intensive care unit on the 4th floor to wait for her. And what happened was there was a miscommunication between the departments, and for about 40 minutes, my mom was dying alone. Nobody was with her. And eventually they brought her up, and she did pass a couple hours later. But after the grieving process, this didn't happen immediately, but a year or so later, I realized that hospital stole 40 of the last minutes that I would ever have with my mom.
Right.
So how I leverage that in all my consulting work is to teach people, as I've already said,
right.
how precious life is, and we only get 1,440 minutes.
Right.
That's my crucible moment that I call upon to have the courage to
right.
speak up to senior execs, to push back.
Right.
I know a management consultant in Manhattan, his story was a Batman costume. He loved Batman in first grade. And he wore the Batman, he had his mom made a Batman costume, and he wore it to school for 6 months. And finally, the principal and the teacher called his mom in and said, "You got to make this kid stop wearing the costume." And he learned something at that moment. His mom said no. She took a stand for creativity.
Right.
This is how he's choosing to express himself.
Right.
So he now leverages a first grade experience.
Right.
To teach corporate executives how to have courage.
Right.
What I can tell you is every single person who's viewing this right now, it could be cancer, it could be death in the family, it could be your high school graduation, it could be a sports championship, it could be something that happened when you were backpacking through Europe. Every single one of us has had at least one experience that we can call upon that said, hey, I had the courage then.
Right.
This is no bigger than when my sister survived cancer or whatever it is.
Right.
We can all look, so that we have to have the courage first to look inwards.
Right.
To realize how important that is.
Yes, I completely agree, because I think we all have had these experiences. We've all been through something or the other which drives us at some point. And not just about courage, but I think it's about your person and everything you become in the process because of these crucible moments in life. So which is and this is probably what makes you, Bill, right? This is your story.
Yes, and what I'm trying to share with your audience is it's a yin and the yang. We have to come back to business. Okay, how do we change the bottom line? How do we change business processes?
Right.
What I'm asking all of your audience to realize is the courage to change business processes, to take a stand and say this is important,
right.
is within you. It's personal.
Right.
So the future of work study, the research, the finding was, the future is personal.
Right.
In order to create the disruptions that are positive, that are going to change the world,
right.
we first need to look inward.
Right, right. So your book on this study is called Future Strong, right?
Yes.
Future Strong. So give us some practical tips, Bill, to help us make life and work and everything else simpler. So let's sort of talk about a couple of things here, not just work, because obviously you are one of the big guys who's helping people understand this. But I'd like to sort of take it further down and further ahead, not further down, but further ahead into, say, life, say relationships, say kids. How does one follow this whole simpler thing, because I know it is simple, but a lot of people don't think it is. So we need to understand that this simplicity is achievable and it's something that we can learn. And I leave that to you to give us those tips.
Very practical tips. Let me first start. I know all your audience vary from very, very senior execs to mid-managers or
Right.
to people on the front lines.
Right.
Something that we all do every day. So just let's start with the real basics. How we communicate with each other.
Right.
Most of us communicate from our perspective. Abha, this is what I want you to understand, and you have to, and I need to tell it to you my way.
Right.
First, let's simplify communication. Simple communication is not, yes, it is short, and I'll get there in a second, but it also is putting yourself, as I said earlier, in the audience's shoes.
Right.
So simpler communication is know, as in knowledge, know, feel, do. Every person who ever wants to hear something from you, as fast as possible, it's what do you want me to know, why should I care about it, and what do you want me to do?
Right.
From the audience's perspective, that's what everybody is looking for. So everything you have to communicate it, put it through that filter. Why did they, what's the most important thing they want to know? Why should they care about it or feel something? And what do you want them to do? Right. Another practical tip is the rule, the 3 to 5 rule. When we communicate with anybody,
right,
you cannot, even if they're an underling or subordinate, you cannot mandate attention. The biggest competition we are going to have over the next 5 years to 10 years right. is not commerce competition.
Right.
The biggest competition is the competition for attention.
Right.
So the 3 to 5 rule is all face-to-face communication within 3 to 5 minutes, you have to get to your point. And people's attention starts to wane within 3 to 5 minutes.
Right.
So, even in this interview, we both tried to keep our interludes to 3 to 5 minutes so we didn't lose people.
Right.
When you are running a team meeting, there is no hour-long team meeting. Right. If you have a meeting for an hour, you must start thinking of it as 12 5-minute segments.
Right.
And even when I do webinars or when I do public speaking, I vary either my tone, my excitement, my passion, right. Calm it down for attention, or I use visuals, but I pace even if I'm talking for an hour, there are at least 12 segments. Right. Now that's face-to-face. Electronically, it's 3 to 5 seconds. So most of us, I've read many, emails like that you get from your clients and your teammates, and they go on and on and on. It's like, stop it. Nobody reads anymore. No one, not even you or me.
Right.
We all are expert skimmers.
Right.
We scan.
Right.
So you have to write for scanning.
Right.
It's 3 to 5 seconds. And I've done the ethnographic research on emails. The maximum amount of space people will give you is the 3x5 card.
Right.
That's maximum. Mm-hmm. And it's getting shorter and shorter and shorter.
Right.
So what you need to do is get to your point and have it easily skimmable electronically,
right.
within 3 to 5 seconds. So that's bullet points and make sure you structure. Here's the one thing I want you to know. This is why you should care about it and what I want you to do. Right. And if you have more to tell people, say see below for more. Right. See the link for more. Right. See the attachment for more. But make sure whatever you communicate to people electronically, right. they can get it within 3 to 5 seconds.
Right.
And face-to-face, they can get it within 3 to 5 minutes.
5 minutes. Great. So that is about the communication part. That is tip, I would say the key tip 1. Okay, so what's tip next?
When you are building processes and procedures, if you're a manager in charge of internal training and development or processes or workflows, you have to realize this thing has changed everything.
Right.
What the phone has done, the mobile phone and the revolution behind the mobile phone, it's what IT people call it the consumerization of IT. And what that means is you and I can get our apps and we can design the interface the way we want it.
Right.
What we have to start getting better at within our companies is getting user-centered. So most corporate processes, we say this is the way HR has to have it done. This is the way manufacturing has to have it done, because we're trying to squeeze the most dollars and efficiency out of the process.
Right.
But in that approach, we also make it complicated for every individual.
Right.
So where we need to go is think, if you were handing me your manufacturing process and I put it on here, would it be easily skimmable? Could I get to it within a couple clicks?
Right.
Could I tailor it to my needs?
Right.
So the information flow, now you can still have a structured internal process that is corporate centered, but the interface, going back to the original story, the interface, I need to be able to change it so it meets Bill Jensen's version of simplicity.
Right.
And mine is going to be different from yours.
Right.
So the future of work has to be simpler. And we need to start designing backwards from the needs of the workforce. So there needs to be a much greater shift, not away from corporate-centered, but to include user-centered needs.
User-centered, right. So when it comes to teams, Bill, this is one of the, we're talking about the corporates and the workforce, but let's sort of keep them over here. They both exist, but in between them is everything is in teams. Now, the whole idea of this, you're talking about communications, and you're talking about processes, and you're talking about the user experience, and that's of the workforce. When people work together, you know, and in that space, this whole idea of simplicity is blown away, because, you know, it looks that when people get together, it becomes more and more complicated. How does one deal with that?
It really comes down to, again, the golden rule, and we all are guilty of complicating it because we put ourselves, our needs into the project.
Right.
What we need to be able to do is look at this from whatever the perspective is, whether it's a consumer or a fellow teammate, from the other person's perspective. I'll give you an example. I was hired by one of the world's largest banks to make banking simpler in the branches.
Right.
And they formed a team. It was a couple hundred people to simplify everything in the branches.
Right.
And we were coming up with great ideas, but they still weren't feeling right to me. So they were using Kaizen and Six Sigma and all corporate designed processes.
Right.
I went out on my own and I interviewed about 20 branch managers. And they said the biggest problem was our email system. I am actually violating the corporate security procedures because I can't get to my emails. And if you could just fix that, you could save me about an hour a day.
Right.
Nobody on the team of a couple hundred people was coming up with that because they were designing the branches from the bank's perspective.
Right.
So again, it comes down to, are you willing to put yourself, and this has been now systematized and ratified by a design firm in California called IDEO, but it's called design thinking.
Okay.
And at the core of design thinking is empathy for the other person, for the end user.
Right.
So you do every design thinking project starts with, okay, if we were going to redesign that branch, simplifying branches, most of the simplification was done from the bank's perspective. If you were doing it from a design thinking, it would be, what was the typical consumer? What is simplicity to them? And are people who serve the consumers, what is simplicity to them? That is the empathy part of design thinking.
Fantastic, Bill. You have this personal life fantasy. We'll probably end this interview with that fantasy of yours. Tell us, where do you want to go on your bicycle, and why are the breweries? Is Is it the beer? Is it the what?
The beer is the reward at the end.
Right, and you're going to
So
find
so I
breweries all over
so
the
I
world,
work
all
so
over
I
the world.
work and then I reward myself. I work and I reward myself.
Right,
It's like in the U.S. in California they have winery tours.
right.
So I've designed beer tours for myself. I bicycle, I drink, I bicycle, I drink.
How nice is that? I mean, I don't drink beer, so otherwise I would have joined you. I could do the bicycle part with you, but I'm not the beer part. So we can do the bicycle and then you go get the beer. So I'll probably do something else well then. Okay. So thank you so much, Bill, for your time. Thank you very much. This was very simple, but very I think very empowering. Like you said, simplicity is about power and is about empowerment. And I really am grateful that you could make it to the show to let our listeners and viewers know what simplicity really means.
Thank you for the time. I appreciate it. If anybody needs help, you've got my email
Yes.
address, and I travel the world. So if you need me there, I'll be there.
Absolutely. If I'll definitely keep in touch and I'll make sure that people hear about this as much as they can, because it is also about optimizing each person's time, each person's potential, and each person's probably the talents and gifts. If we are able to see it the way Bill Jensen is showing. So this was Bill Jensen, Mr. Simplicity for you, an internationally acclaimed thought leader who's known to make things easier for everybody. He wants you to work smarter and not harder. Please go and look up Bill Jensen on www.simplerwork.com. That is simplerwork.com. And you can email him at bill@simplerwork.com. Otherwise, just go and Google him because you'll find him there anyway. So, Bill, thank you very much. And I look forward to speak one more time later. Bye-bye.
Thank you.